Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is a 2015 indie horror game developed by Scott Cawthon that places the player in the role of a traumatized young child confined to their bedroom, forced to survive against terrifying threats throughout the night. Unlike earlier entries in the series, which primarily featured security guards monitoring animatronic characters via surveillance cameras, this installment presents a more intimate and emotionally charged experience. This shift in perspective transforms the gameplay into a more personal psychological challenge. This analysis explores the psychological and ludological elements of the game, examining how it uses fear, suspense, limited control, and storytelling to create a deeply unsettling and immersive experience. The psychological horror of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is intensified by transforming familiar characters into terrifying figures. Once beloved animatronics are rendered monstrous with grotesque exaggerated features such as sharp claws, fanged jaws, and distorted faces. These transformations serve as a metaphor for corrupted innocence. Characters that were once a source of joy now evoke terror. The game plays on the uncanny valley effect, where something is almost human or familiar but disturbingly off, creating a deep sense of unease. Experiencing the game from the perspective of a child further heightens vulnerability as players are pulled into the character's trauma and fear. The child's bedroom, typically a place of safety and comfort, becomes the setting for terrifying encounters, inverting expectations and tapping into deep seated childhood fears. Unlike many horror games that allow free movement or combat, FNaF 4 restricts the players to brief movements within the child's bedroom. The inability to run or hide adds the overwhelming sense of helplessness. Players must rely heavily on sound cues to anticipate attacks, learning to interpret breathing, footsteps, and mechanical noises to determine when danger is near. This focus on audio heightens immersion and tension, forcing players to engage deeply with their surroundings. The act of having to open a door to check for threats, with the possibility of a jump scare if timed poorly, introduces a calculated risk that keeps players constantly on edge. It creates tension between action and inaction, where listening too long may cost precious time and acting too soon may trigger a fatal mistake. The game provides little to no direct guidance, leaving players to learn through trial and failure. This ambiguity fuels anxiety as the mind fills in the unknown with its own worst fears. The darkness at the end of each hallway or the silence behind a door becomes fertile ground for psychological dread. According to Anne Laura Lee, uncertainty in horror games triggers the imagination, making the experience more intense than explicitly showing threats. This technique aligns with the psychological theory that fear of the unknown is more powerful than known dangers. FNaF 4 thrives on this principle by giving minimal clues about mechanics, character behavior, or narrative clarity, allowing players to project their fears into every moment of silence or shadow. This atmosphere of unpredictability makes the horror more personalized and therefore more effective. From a gameplay perspective, FNaF 4 requires the player to monitor four main points of entry: the left and right doors, the closet in front, and the bed behind. The player must continually rotate between these points to detect and respond to incoming threats. This repetitive scanning process creates a loop of tension and vigilance, where a single lapse in focus can result in a jump scare and reset progress. Surviving each night, from midnight to 6 a.m., demands split second decisions, memorization of patterns, and careful listening. The use of static camera angles and fixed routes between areas emphasizes the player's lack of control, contrasting with many other horror games where freedom and movement provides a sense of agency. The game doesn't allow midnight saves, meaning that one mistake can send the player back to the beginning of the night. This structure promotes mastery through repetition as players learn movement patterns and optimize their response over time. As the nights progress, new animatronics are introduced and their behavior becomes more aggressive and unpredictable, reducing reaction time and increasing difficulty. Furthermore, the solo nature of the game heightens isolation. Without multiplayer support, players must rely entirely on their own skill, adding another layer of psychological pressure. The escalating challenge combined with personal accountability creates an environment that is mentally taxing and emotionally engaging, pushing players to their cognitive limits. Beyond the mechanics, FNaF 4 features a tragic storyline that enhances the emotional stakes. The animatronics that terrorizes the protagonist are revealed to be symbolic representations of the child's only friends. The game's backstory, revealed through minigames and environmental storytelling, unveils that the child is bullied by his older brother, Michael Afton, who was an animatronic mask during the events leading to the protagonist's accidental death. This backstory adds layers of guilt, betrayal, and emotional trauma, deepening the player's engagement with the story. The entire game can be interpreted as a metaphorical representation of the child's descent into fear and loss of trust in those closest to him. The use of dreamlike segments and fragmented memories blurs the lines between reality and imagination, inviting players to reflect on the psychological aftermath of trauma. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 masterfully blends psychological horror and gameplay mechanics to produce a chilling, emotionally resonant experience. By placing players in the role of a frightened child, the game leverages limited movement, audio dependency, and ambiguous threats to provoke fear and tension. Its replay focused structure encourages learning and mastery, while the haunting narrative enriches the emotional depth. Through its minimalistic design and complex symbolism, the game stands as a compelling story of how trauma, fear, and gameplay can be interwoven into an unforgettable horror experience. It not only challenges players' reflexes and memory, but also provokes deeper thought about childhood fears and how games can mirror internal psychological struggles.